I gave my neighbor permission to trim a few branches hanging over his yard. He hired a crew that chopped down half my tree. Too late now, he said. I filed a report, but that wouldn't bring back 22 years of growth. So I planted something right at the line that. I've lived in this house in Bellingham, Washington since 1998. It's not fancy, just a small 2-bedroom on a quiet cul-de-sac. But it's mine. Paid off. Everything here means something. Especially the sugar maple in my backyard. I planted that tree 22 years ago, the day after we buried my father. He always said if I ever had a backyard of my own, I should put in a maple. They hold the seasons better than anything, he told me once. I didn't fully get what he meant back then. I do now. That tree grew slow, steady. Every fall it turned deep red, and every spring it bloomed back with this hopeful green. Over the years, it shaded my lawn, kept my house cooler, and gave birds a home. It wasn't just a tree. It was the only thing that grew while everything else in my life seemed to stop or fall apart. 3 years ago, Doug moved in next door. Divorced guy, mid-40s, worked remote, always had contractors at his house, landscaping, roofing, redoing the siding for no reason. He seemed like the type who wanted everything to look like a catalog. We got along fine. Mostly waves and how's it going over the fence. Last June, he knocks on my door. Friendly enough. Said some branches from my tree were hanging over his side and he was worried about them falling on his shed. I said, yeah, I can take a look. Or if you want, you can trim them, just what's over your property. He nodded. Exactly, just a little off the top. Nothing major. I made the mistake of trusting him. That Friday, I came home and saw a landscaping crew hauling logs into a chipper. Logs. Not branches. Not twigs. They'd butchered my tree. Almost the entire left half was gone. Not trimmed, hacked. You could see the raw white wood where they'd sliced massive limbs off, straight to the trunk. It looked uneven, stressed. Like it was tipping away from the wound. My stomach dropped. I didn't even go inside. I walked straight to Doug's place and pounded on his door. He opened it, still holding a drink. Hey. I pointed at the tree. What the hell did you do? He didn't even flinch. It was hanging over my yard. I had a crew come out. They cut what was over the line. I said, you took half the tree. He looked past me, at the trunk. Smiled a little. Too late now. That was it. Too late now. I called the city that night. Filed a report. Spoke to the planning and development office. They sent someone out to look, but the damage was already done. Because the limbs had crossed into his airspace, he had the right to trim them. Legally, it was a gray area. They told me unless he damaged the trunk or stepped onto my property, there was nothing I could do. By mid-August, the tree started to rot on one side. The wound was too deep, too wide. It stopped growing. Leaves died early. I paid $1,400 to have it removed. I don't think Doug even noticed. Or cared. I didn't say another word to him. Not then. But I kept looking at that line. That invisible fence line between our yards. And I started thinking about what I could plant. What I could do, within the law, to make sure he never enjoyed his yard the way he used to. So I planted something right at the line that made sure he'd never forget what he did. A row of western red cedars. 12 of them, spaced just tight enough to grow into a thick privacy wall. I planted them exactly 6 inches inside my property line, measured it 3 times. They grow fast, tall, dense. Within 3 years, he wouldn't see a single thing past them. No birds, no sunset, no view of the bay. Just green. I didn't say a word. Just started digging one Saturday morning. Doug came out in his slippers, holding a coffee. He stood at the edge of his lawn, staring. What's all this? He asked. I didn't stop digging. Planting trees. He stared a little longer. Right at the property line? I looked up. My property. You stay on your side, remember? He didn't answer. Just went back inside. The next few weeks were quiet. Too quiet. No lawn mowers, no hammering, no yelling at contractors. But I noticed little things. Dead grass patches near the cedars, cigarette butts tossed under them, like someone was trying to send a message. I put up a camera facing that side of the yard. Nothing obvious ever showed up, but the petty stuff kept coming. Dog poop tossed under the fence. Once, a plastic bag filled with what smelled like paint thinner appeared near the base of one of the young trees. Still, I didn't confront him. I documented everything. I saved the footage, logged the dates. Called a friend at the nursery who told me how to care for the cedars and keep them healthy. By the end of fall, they were nearly 6 feet tall. Doug must have realized they weren't going anywhere. That winter, I noticed a new shed going up on his side. Bigger. Closer to the line. Way closer than 5 feet, which the local code requires. I called the city. Turns out he never filed for a permit. The inspector came out. Measured everything. Ordered it torn down within 30 days or face daily fines. I watched from my kitchen window as the crew came back to dismantle it. Doug didn't look over once. Not during the inspection, not during the teardown, not after. But a week later, I came outside to find something nailed to my cedar trunk. A small wooden sign. Carved words, "Enjoy your wall. Hope it keeps you warm at night." I left it there for a day. Then I took it down and put it on his porch, with a note, "At least my wall's still alive." From there, things escalated. He installed motion sensor lights aimed at my house. Bright ones, the kind used on construction sites. They'd flood my bedroom window every time I let my dog out at night. I called code enforcement again. Light pollution complaint. They made him adjust the angles. He stopped waving. Stopped making eye contact. But he didn't stop trying. The next spring, I noticed something strange. 4 of the cedars on the end started yellowing fast. At first I thought it was a soil issue. Then I dug near the roots. Buried deep, I found something wrapped in cloth. When I opened it, it smelled like bleach. That was when I realized, this wasn't just a grudge. It was war. I called the police. Told them I suspected someone was tampering with the soil on my property. They came out, took a report, but didn't take much interest once they saw there wasn't a camera catching him in the act. They told me to consider installing more surveillance. So I did. 2 cameras. One hidden in the birdhouse on the garage, the other disguised as a sprinkler head near the cedars. A week later, I caught him. Clear as day, Doug, in the middle of the night, wearing gloves and a hoodie, digging near the base of my trees. He poured something from a container into the soil and buried the evidence again. I downloaded the footage, backed it up to 3 places, then called the police again. This time, they couldn't ignore it. They came out, watched the footage right there in my living room, and agreed this was criminal. Intentional destruction of property. They questioned him the next day. He denied everything. Said I must have edited the footage. Even claimed I had a grudge and was trying to ruin his life. They didn't arrest him, but they warned him to stay off my property and said if anything happened again, they'd press charges. The tree survived. I treated the soil with activated charcoal and compost, followed my nursery friend's advice to the letter. They bounced back, slowly. Greener than ever by late summer. But Doug didn't stop. He just got smarter. One night, I heard a strange popping noise outside. I went out and saw small burn marks on my lawn. Something had scorched patches of grass in a perfect line. I followed the path and found a half-buried metal pipe that led from his side of the yard. He'd rigged up some kind of illegal heating cable to run along the property line, likely to damage roots without ever stepping foot on my land. That was the last straw. I didn't call the cops. I called my lawyer. See, a year earlier, I'd quietly bought a small slice of land behind both our properties, an odd little strip that had been part of an abandoned easement. No one ever used it, and Doug didn't even know it existed. But now, with that land in my name, I had the legal right to access his back fence. And I did. Through that easement, I started building something. Not tall, not loud. But noticeable. A long, low rock wall, decorative but clearly marking the new boundary. I added planter boxes. Motion-triggered sprinklers. And something else, an outdoor speaker system, wired low and buried in mulch, set to go off with a single click from my phone. At 3 a.m. one night, Doug's security lights snapped on again, aimed at my window. So I clicked. The speakers turned on, quiet at first, then loud. Not music. Not voices. Just one sound, on a loop, the high-pitched whine of a chainsaw starting. Over and over. I watched from my window as he came outside in his robe, confused, furious, looking for the source. Then I turned it off. And the next day, I left something on his porch, a small maple sapling, in a pot, with a note that read, "Grow something. Learn to leave it alone." But I knew Doug. He wasn't the type to take a lesson. He was the type to look for a way to win. 2 weeks after I left the sapling, I noticed something strange in my mailbox. No envelope. Just a folded photo. It was a picture of my front door, taken from the street, but zoomed in. Underneath, scribbled in pen, "Things grow both ways." No signature. No return address. I showed it to the police. They shrugged. Not illegal to take photos, they said. But they made a note of it. I added another camera, this one pointing out toward the street. For a while, nothing happened. Then, one morning, I walked out and found that someone had dumped a 5-gallon bucket of fish guts right at the base of my cedar wall. It reeked. I nearly threw up just getting close enough to bag it up. The ground was slick with oil and blood. I didn't report it. I didn't even clean it right away. I just stared at it for a long time, then turned and looked at Doug's house. His blinds twitched. That night, I opened my laptop and started typing up a post. Not for the police. Not for Reddit. For a local Facebook group called Bellingham Neighbor Watch. They've got over 18,000 members. People share everything from car prowlers to lost pets. I didn't name Doug. I didn't have to. I posted the full story, including the photos, the surveillance clips, the city report about the illegal shed, even the fish bucket, blurred but unmistakable. I told people what it's been like living next to someone who thinks they're untouchable. The post blew up. Dozens of comments. People chiming in about similar stories, some even recognizing Doug's house from previous complaints. Someone mentioned he'd had code violations in a different town before moving here. Someone else found his business page. He ran a freelance home design consulting service, and left reviews warning others to be careful. Doug went quiet. His yard started to look neglected. Grass long. Weeds everywhere. No more contractors. No more light shows at 3 a.m. Then, one Sunday afternoon, I saw a for sale sign on his front lawn. No announcement. No handshake. No goodbye. Just a sign. He moved out 6 weeks later. But that's not the twist. The real twist came when the new owners moved in, a quiet retired couple from Spokane. Friendly, polite, no drama. We talked a few times over the fence. One day, the wife asked me casually, what was the deal with the concrete slab near the cedars? The one with the rusted pipe sticking out? I had no idea what she meant. She showed me. There, hidden under an old garden bed behind Doug's shed, was a concrete pad maybe 3 feet wide. Newer than everything else around it. And in the center, half rusted and jagged, was a piece of pipe sticking up like a broken marker. I had a surveyor come out. Turns out Doug had built part of his shed on my land. That easement I'd bought? It extended a full 6 feet further than I thought. That pipe? It had been the original survey marker. He'd buried it. Poured concrete over it. He knew. I took that discovery straight to my lawyer. With the old marker exposed and the original survey still on file, it was an easy case to make. Doug had knowingly built on my property and tried to hide it. We filed a claim. The new owners were caught in the middle, and I hated that. They were good people. They offered to pay for the removal themselves just to avoid legal trouble. I told them not to worry, I'd cover it, but I wanted to keep the concrete as evidence. They agreed. We dug it up in sections, carefully. And underneath, I found more than just concrete. Buried in the dirt, inside a plastic container, were two things. A rusted, old pair of shears, a laminated copy of my original property survey, folded in half, no note. No explanation. Just, left there like a trophy. I didn't tell the new neighbors everything. Just enough to explain the tension. They didn't press. That spot? Where the shed used to be, where the pipe stuck out like a broken tooth, I turned it into a garden. I planted a new sugar maple. Young, still fragile. But this time I built a fence around it. Low, simple. Nothing fancy. Just enough to say, this one stays. I still catch myself looking over the fence sometimes, like I expect to see him there, arms crossed, watching. But it's just quiet now. The new tree's growing slow, like the first one did. And I don't stand out there with coffee like I used to. I don't sit under it. Not yet. I don't know if I'll ever feel the same way about anything I plant again. But I planted it anyway. Because sometimes, doing the right thing still leaves you with a hole. And you just live around it.